How many people do you know for whom opening up a paper or watching a news broadcast is an act of hope rather than just a responsibility? And if that isn't possible, shouldn't there be at least some element of that to our relationship with the media? Hi there, my name is Paolo Granelli, and this is my presentation on the field of solutions journalism, a fairly young form of journalism focused on bringing a more positive outlook to modern news coverage. In this presentation, we'll be looking at what solutions journalism is, prominent solutions journalists and institutions, and the pros and possible pitfalls of the field. So what is solutions journalism? To explain that, I'd first like to talk about something called compassion fatigue. In my research for this presentation, compassion fatigue was one of the first concepts I came across, and it really struck a chord with me. Studied by Kinnick, Krugen and Cameron in their 1996 paper of the same name, in the context of news, they defined compassion fatigue as encompassing desensitisation and emotional burnout as a phenomenon associated with pervasive communication about social problems. But thankfully for us, they put it more simply in the next line as emotional fatigue with society's problems. Compassion fatigue can even be narrowed to more specific instances, like the more recent corona fatigue people experience while engaging with pandemic-based news. On a personal level, looking back over 2020 and 2021, I realised that a lot of my own experience with the news had resulted in compassion fatigue, and it was my struggle with this phenomenon that partly led me to pursue journalism as a career. Studies have shown that though low levels of controversy spark conversation, high levels of it halt it. This suggests that news stories that use a conflict resolution or problem solution frame might be more effective in engaging audiences than stories that are only framed in regard to conflicts or problems. So if we view compassion fatigue as a growing reason for unhappiness for readers, or even a reason for them to disengage with the news, the solution to this problem is, well, solutions. So now we can finally loop back to that main question: what is solutions journalism? High quality solutions journalism, Bench said, differs from other good journalism in one simple way. Instead of pointing out what's wrong in the hope that someone will fix it, solutions journalism points out what's right, hoping someone can emulate it. What the practice of solutions journalism assumes is that the way for mainstream media to combat compassion fatigue and growing apathy towards the news is to not only report on social problems, but the people trying, and in some cases succeeding, to fix them. By finding stories based around actionable solutions to problems, we can present our audience with a sense of hope, if not also processes they themselves can get behind. Practicing solutions journalism has also been found to have a positive effect on journalists, as a case study on Utah's Desert News, a partner of the Solutions Journalism Network, said, "It challenges them to ask smarter questions and made them feel like there was more meaning in their work." In 2017, a study by McIntyre found that solution information caused readers to feel less negative after reading a news story, and caused them to have more favourable attitudes both towards the news article and towards possible solutions to the problem presented in the story. Unfortunately, in this particular study, the solution information did not cause readers to feel more confident in their ability to contribute to a solution, nor did it impact their behaviour or intentions to act. But arguably, a solution need only reach one person to be effective, as best illustrated by Sarika Banzal in a 2013 TED Talk on behalf of the Solutions Journalism Network.
In January 1997, New York Times columnist Nick Kristof wrote an article about how inexpensive it is to fight diarrhea, which kills 1.5 million children a year. He explained how things like clean toilets, good drinking water, and education lead to huge improvements in child health. Bill Gates, who was then happily heading Microsoft, stumbled across Kristof's article and was apparently struck by how solvable many of the challenges seemed to be. Gates credits reading that article as the reason his foundation now gives $800 million every year to improve global health. He even has a framed copy of the article in his Seattle office.
Some examples of prominent solutions journalism institutions are the SJN, who we just heard someone speak on behalf of. The SJN focuses on training journalists through workshops to spread the practice. Positive News, the self-proclaimed world's first positive newspaper, which is run as a kind of co-op founded by readers and patrons, with a strong emphasis on transparency about this. Reporters d'Espoirs, similar to the SJN in that they coordinate with other news outlets to train and promote solutions journalism. And even the BBC dabbles in solutions journalism with a podcast, People Fixing the World. In 2018, Harriet Noble gave a TEDx talk that included the approach to solutions journalism for the BBC World Service, including the programme World Hacks and the podcast People Fixing the World. During this talk, she illustrated the 6 criteria those programmes had for publishable stories, which gives us a clear idea of what solutions journalism requires.
The way that I think about it is I ask myself 6 questions. Firstly, obviously, is something solving a problem? Secondly, is it innovative? And by that, I mean, is the way the problem is being solved surprising, different, interesting in itself? There will be solutions we don't cover because they are just a bit boring or unexciting. It could be just putting a lot of money into something. There's only so much you can say about that. Next, we're still in the news game, so the solution has to be new in some way. Either the people we're covering have to be the first people to have been doing this or to add something new to the work. And it needs to be something new to the audience, which ties into my fourth criteria, which is how much coverage has this solution had already. Ideally, we want World Hacks to be the first place that someone is finding out about this solution. The next question I ask myself is actually more of a wish than a necessity, which is there a strong central character? Pretty often at the root of the solution you'll have someone or some people, and quite often they will have some kind of connection to the problem or something that made them want to solve it. If there is a story about one of these people that we can tell, we like to tell it. The final question, my sixth question that I ask myself, is actually one of the most important, and that's what evidence is there that this solution is working? That evidence can take different forms. There might be multiple randomized control trials published in respected scientific journals, or it might just be that the anecdotal evidence is really strong. We use our judgment as journalists to decide if a story is good enough to go on air, and most importantly, we are honest with our audience about that.
There's a strong sense of social responsibility to solutions journalism. But that brings us to the concerns amongst some academics and veteran journalists that solutions journalism teeters on a fine line too close to advocacy. By reporting on one solution over others and ignoring the role of journalism in agenda setting, some consider solutions journalists to no longer be adhering to the level of impartiality expected of them. Any solutions reported on are likely to be legitimised in the public discourse, simply through the act of reporting on them, which to some is tantamount to advocacy. Obviously, we expect objectivity in our journalism, but this concept has been challenged by sociologists as early as the 1970s, arguing that journalists do not simply report the news, they create it. They argued that objectivity is impossible given that all people, including journalists, are influenced by the societies in which they live, and their experiences influence what they report on and how they frame it. So if true objectivity is impossible, especially in our case of solutions journalism, what can journalists do to make sure their stories live up to journalistic practice? In conclusions drawn by Atamura and Varma, on one hand, there is a clear line that prohibits journalism from mobilising social change by publishing calls for action, or even recommending solutions. But as David Bornstein states in the American Press Institute's article, they do not proclaim what should be done, and they do not exhort readers to take specific action, such as signing a petition or donating money. Solutions journalism thus situates itself simultaneously as a positive force in society and as a neutral actor. By showcasing solutions, it can contribute to social change, but also claim to be autonomous and impartial. I hadn't heard about solutions journalism prior to this project, but in discovering it, I think I may have found a key building block for my career. As I said before, compassion fatigue is partly what led me to this point, and if I can alleviate that feeling for others, while adding the social value to my work I wish to see in the news at that time, then I can contribute to a growing positive relationship between the media and the public. For now, I'll leave you with the final words of Harriet and Fred Rogers, which I think illustrate the importance of solutions journalism better than I can. I've been Paolo Granelli. Thank you for listening.
I've been doing a lot of thinking about why I think solutions journalism is so important. And I can best explain it with the help of this quote from the American children's TV presenter Fred Rogers, known as Mr. Rogers. When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, "Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping." To this day, especially in times of disaster, I remember my mother's words, and I'm always comforted by realizing that there are still so many helpers, so many caring people in this world. The news is often full of scary things, full of problems, as it should be. The world can be a scary place. But it's solutions journalism that looks for the helpers, and in doing so gives us a wider and therefore more complete, more accurate and more honest view of the world.